Hi, my name is Logan. I'm a student physical therapist assistant at Owens Community College, and this is my wheelchair experience project. So I took my wheelchair to River Diner and my brother's flooring company. The first place I took it was River Diner. I loaded up the wheelchair in my van and drove over to the River Diner with my dad. He helped me get it out of the vehicle because it's way more heavy than I honestly was anticipating. We got it all set up. I sat in the wheelchair and I wheeled myself over to the ramp. The parking lot was in pretty rough shape. There was a bunch of stones everywhere. There was some holes in the pavement that I had to dip and dodge. The ramp was on the sidewalk, and that was kind of falling apart as well. But once I got into the restaurant, it was pretty wheelchair accessible. There was a few chairs that weren't pushed in, but my dad just pushed those in for me, and I wheeled up to the table. I expected it to be a little more difficult to maneuver in a restaurant with a wheelchair, but I think something that you can't prepare yourself for are the looks that people give you. And I don't think anyone means anything by it because I know I'm guilty of it. But just giving someone a smirk, it kind of feels like they feel bad for you. Even if you're just being nice, sometimes it can come across as condescending or it just makes you feel uncomfortable. And I definitely experienced a few people looking at me in a different way. And I know I'm guilty of it, and I think of it as a nice gesture, but being in that position definitely made me conscious that sometimes it doesn't come across that way. But eating and moving to the bathroom, their bathroom was completely wheelchair accessible as well. So that was really nice. After River Diner, I went to my brother's flooring company. And so there's two spaces in this business. There's the office area, and then there's a factory portion of the shop as well. The factory is huge and very wide open, and there's just aisles of equipment and other tools. So that's very open, very wide. I can turn and wheel wherever I want to. The only thing that wasn't accessible was the water fountain. It literally stood taller than me sitting down, so I couldn't reach that. And then there is one of those round sinks in the locker room that you have to step on for the water to come out, so that's not necessarily appropriate for someone who's wheelchair bound. But other than that, the factory portion was extremely wheelchair accessible. And then going into the office, there is a wheelchair ramp, which was nice, and it was well maintained as well. All of the office doorways the clearance was great. I could wheel in and out with no trouble at all. The hallways, I could turn around with enough room. The bathroom was wheelchair accessible. The only two things were the water fountain and then the factory sink. So those were my two community dwellings. So now on to my home. I live in a house that was built by a man who was in a wheelchair. So there is a lot of wheelchair-friendly accommodations in my home. I do have a wheelchair ramp that goes up from my garage into the kitchen area. So that made it really nice. However, no one in my house is in a wheelchair, so we do have a fridge on part of the ramp and then our shoes on the other part. So I was unable to use the ramp, but if someone were to come to the house, we would rearrange that. Going into the front door, there is a huge, it's not a step, but there is a 2-inch difference from the front door to the sidewalk. So getting into the house by myself was definitely a struggle. And the kitchen, there's so many things that you wouldn't even think about unless you're in a wheelchair. I couldn't get my vitamins. Even just washing your hands in the kitchen sink I barely could even reach the knob for the water, the faucet. Cooking is extremely hard. Our kitchen countertops they're like your average height, so I probably couldn't reach up and cut like any vegetables or fruits. My fridge is not wheelchair accessible, so I couldn't reach the top of the fridge for my eggs or any juice. A bunch of, like, there's so many things in the kitchen that are not accommodating for wheelchairs. All of the doorways are extremely wide. The stairs, my bedroom's upstairs, so I couldn't even get up to my bedroom. But on the main floor, there's a bathroom that's wheelchair accessible, and then the living room's super wide open. Other than the kitchen, everything for the most part was accommodating. So yeah, this project definitely gave me a lot of insight about wheelchair bound patients, and I feel like I have always had a lot of empathy for just anyone. I always try to put myself in other people's shoes, but this definitely gave me a better understanding of what it feels like to be in a wheelchair, what it feels like to have people look at you a certain way, how much more difficult life is just because you're in a wheelchair. There's so much that you don't think about, and it made me very grateful to be healthy.